Yeah, this is based on a true life event in the early 1920s in a place called Littlehampton in the south coast of Britain, where a series of poison pen letters, as they were called at that time, were delivered to a seemingly respectable lady in the town. She's a church-going spinster, lives with her father and a mother, part of a big family, but they've all moved away. Lives a quite an innocuous life, but she's suddenly been getting these really vile, sort of extreme, explicit letters. And her neighbour is a loud, vulgar Irish woman who lives with her daughter. She's reported to be a war widow. This is just after the First World War, and she lives with her partner, who she's not married to. So she is basically becoming the obvious target of like, well, it must be her. Who else would it be? It must be her. And so the story progresses where basically we look at the sequence of events of these letters arriving, and then this lady next door being arrested, and sort of events unfolding as to whether did she write the letters or not. And there's a whole cast of characters, basically people who pop up and have an opinion about whether she wrote the letters or whether she didn't. And it's this sort of this a clash of the titans really between these two characters played by Olivia Colman, sorry, and I'm trying to think what her name is,
Jessie Buckley.
Jessie Buckley, that's it. They are the clash of these two titans over these letters that have been bombarding the town. And it starts off with basically there's one lady who gets them, and then it quickly spreads, and then they spread, and that basically anyone and everyone basically have been starting to get these vulgar, explicit letters.
Yeah. So question. I know that obviously that's the whole thing about it. Are they like vulgar for the time, or are they just vulgar full stop?
I think you'd say they were vulgar full stop, but at the time they would have been particularly shocking. Yeah. Because
Okay.
we're quite used to nowadays people effing and jeffing all the time.
Okay.
But I think in those days it was a bit more unusual in the real events because it was a national scandal. The fact that these letters were they didn't catch the person who did these letters, and the fact that this seemingly perfect woman, this sort of Sunday school teacher, spinster, a member of the church, upstanding member of the community, is being so targeted by this, and that it became like a cause célèbre, really.
I was just thinking that I was reading something about people like footballers getting abused online with social media. I'm thinking this could be kind of weirdly topical, even though it's set ages ago. Sean, what did you think?
Okay, so yeah, for me, this was I know I'm gonna. Trouble is, there's things I want to say, but I don't want to sound prejudiced or racist or things like that. But I mean, we're talking Littlehampton, which is probably the most Edwardian town you could possibly get. A quaint little thing, and I don't miss any, but there's some characters that, shall we say, there's a magistrate judge. I don't know, Sharon, perhaps you could have there. There's a magistrate judge that would just be so out of place. He just would not.
He's played by a black actor. Yeah, the High Court judge.
Oh, I see what you mean.
There's no way in 100,000 years they would have.
In 1923.
And not in the 1920s. They're not going to have it. It just wouldn't happen. Then, I don't want that to sound like a. I don't want to be pilloried and.
No, we were talking about this, but sort of there's colourblind casting, and then there's sort of like being period correct casting, and you can understand how people want to have representation, but it felt like it was so consciously diverse that it became noticeable. Do you know what I mean? Because so I can understand why it was done, because like there's the police officer investigating it is played by an Asian lady, and the thing about the police officer that she played is that she was actually famous for being the first female police constable in Littlehampton, and she was a great big strapping woman from the town, so she was a white English woman. She wasn't a very petite Asian lady. So it's some of these things you think, I can understand it.
That's
also
okay.
Played by.
I can see like played by Angela Vassan. I can see that the cast also has Lolia Defokwe in it, and
he was a postmistress.
And see Malachi Kirby, Adam Treasure. I can see that. Yeah, it's an interesting one because I feel like, this is one of these things that I think colorblind casting has been going on stage, and it works a lot better on stage than I think it does on film. And if you're doing something that is period set, but like when they did like
Copperfield?
yeah, David Copperfield. I can't remember what the full title of it is, but like when they did David Copperfield, or when they did that Mister Something's List,
Mr. Malcolm's List.
Mr. Malcolm's List. And I think when you have those things, which are set in a time period but are not like historical things, I think it works. I think you can get. I think it
When it's
works.
a work of fiction, it doesn't matter. Because you think this is a fictional world they've been set in. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
When
I
it
mean,
is
I mean, the Copperfield
when
thing
is
actually
his
worked.
yeah, no, Copperfield worked really, really well because it
Yeah.
was so obvious that they were doing a colorblind clandestine thing that after a while you're just kind of like, yeah, it makes total sense that Chinese man is the father of a of a dual heritage woman who has a black mother and a white father kind of thing. It makes total sense kind of like, and but when it's something historical and you're trying to talk about historical events, it does not. I feel like it jars. I feel like all of a sudden you're kind of like this. This is taking me out of it. It's not. I'm not getting into the story or
It became
anything
a bit
like that.
conspicuous. It's got to
Yeah,
the point
yeah,
where
it's
there was
too
like only three
conspicuous,
police.
really.
There were like four policemen in the police station, and one of those was a black officer. And then there was like a little urchin running around in the street, and he was played by a little Asian boy. You just think it was like conspicuous. And you're
I mean,
thinking,
I
it
could
did
understand
feel
in
like it was
maybe
colourblind, but it's, you know, should
Southampton
be of
or
a
Bristol or somewhere in
Cardiff
London.
or anywhere like
I
that.
would
Yeah.
think,
No,
Edwardian.
even at that time, I don't think you would have that.
No.
No.
I don't think you would have that, and I don't think you would have that. And I'm guessing that in this film, nobody mentions anything about it. Like nobody mentions the
Not
fact that.
mentioned
Hang on a second, we've got an Indian woman as a constable. Like nobody mentions anything about that. So
They mention
so,
the fact that she's a woman quite a lot, but they don't mention anything else. And you're
Yeah.
thinking, why would you pick on that one aspect of her character when maybe
Yeah.
there's other targets that you could?
I can understand that it doesn't quite fit. But that being
back to that
said, what do we
anyway.
think about
That
the film?
aside,
That aside, yeah, for me, I thought I don't know, there was a bit too much of it. It went on for me, the actual words. I mean, I don't know if there was to try to be some shock value, but it just seemed to be that as the things went on, there was, I mean, I don't mind swearing at all, but
But you thought that, but for you, it got a bit much.
no, not really that much. But I just sort of thought it was a bit repetitive all the time, I thought it was well acted. They were, especially Olivia Colman's dad. Was that he was that actor?
Timothy
Famous
Spall.
Timothy Spall, yeah. I could imagine. I seem to remember my great granddad being a little bit that way with a tweedy suit and just being totally grumpy all the time. I think that's probably some hangover from the First World War and losing people and stuff. And but anyway, so yeah, I thought the acting was really good from all the characters, really. But yeah, so
Okay. And how about you, Sharon? What did you think?
I didn't like it.
Okay, so first of all, I can imagine that because of you and because of you have certain things like you're not a big fan of the language, and you're not a big fan of the language, and I know that nipples in the films you think are unnecessary. So, was it just the language that you couldn't get past, or was it something else?
It was part of the language and it's part of the attitude. I personally had a bit of a hang up about they really emphasised the fact that this woman was an upstanding Christian member of the society, and her dad was this upstanding Christian man, and they're part of the ladies' Christian whist drive, and they made quite a big point of that. And yet, I did not see a positive representation of Christianity in any of it. I thought she was a hypocrite. I'm not. That is a bit of a spoiler, but one of the main characters who was portrayed as being like this upstanding Christian woman, complete hypocrite. And her father was a monster, a hypocrite. He was homophobic as well. I mean, the fact that they didn't make any racial slurs in the whole film, but he was one of the guys who's saying, well, I'm not a Nancy boy, and they talk about queers and using expressions that are offensive, but they made a point of that, but it was the only people who use those slurs are the ones who are supposed to be these Christian upright people. And in the Christian group, they had basically the ones who were like the good eggs all swore, and so it's like they didn't. It seems like it's like liberating to swear. So you have like these Christian ladies who, like the good egg ones, swore just as much as, and their language they used was like in the letters.
Yeah.
The use of like this sort of sexual swear words. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute. So they're either all hypocrites, or they don't believe what they say, or they're monsters. They're homophobic. They're There was not a single positive representation of Christianity in it, and I personally find that a bit tiresome. So I'm thinking
Yeah.
it's like
I
I
have to
just found
agree
it
with
tiresome.
Sharon on that point. In fact, I would say it was thinking about it with the just showing the repression. It was just like it, anyway. Yeah, no. So, and I mean,
Yeah,
I
she was repressed by she had to
yeah,
read the
yeah,
Bible,
yeah.
and they made a point of like she reads the
Yeah,
Bible every day
and
as if it's like
and I agree with Sharon that I mean I'm not really someone to pick up on that normally or anything like that. But when we spoke about the film afterwards, I agree with Sharon all the way there. It did actually, I did think it did actually show. Well, there was nothing positive, was there, about
So so
no.
so just a little first base.
a, a little
So
first base?
yeah, a little first base. Like they don't they it's kind of because it's kind of like
No,
it's kind of
that
like it's the stereotype you get, especially in movies and everything like that. That if you're going to have a Christian person, they're going to be a hypocrite and they're going to be the bad guy.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
exactly that.
yeah.
They made
It's
no
and I,
attempt to sort of do anything other than it was a for complete a veneer. It was like a veneer, and they never
yeah.
showed a real Christian in it.
all
So
right,
I'm thinking if
okay,
you're going to use this as an example, and I think the ladies in their Christian group, who some of them were like, supposed to be these church-going, upstanding ladies, they were just as sweary as the others. I'm
yeah.
thinking, well, so they so they're hypocrites
Especially,
as well, then basically. And
Well,
if they're
yeah,
going to use this language, why would these offensively worded letters be so offensive if they're going to swear like that anyway? You know
yeah,
what I mean? Why
yeah,
would you
yeah.
receive a letter and be so outraged by the fact that it's Jeffin and Jeffin in this letter? Then you go along and effing and Jeffin when you're talking to a place in a public place on a public omnibus, surrounded by people, and they don't even look at you when you start effing and Jeffin in 1923. To me,
Yeah,
it was just like I didn't like it.
yeah. It sounds like it's missing some nuance, but we have to move on. How many stars
yeah.
would you
Yeah,
give this?
two.
Yeah, I'm struggling between a 2 and a 3. I'm struggling, I suppose. I mean, I got to be honest. I really didn't enjoy the film. I didn't enjoy the
Okay.
film. I mean, it was almost like a suffrage to watch it. You know what I mean? Not being the thing. So I think I'm probably, and I mean, this might be controversial with a lot of people, and probably may get a lot of flack on this, but I would agree with Sharon that I would only give this a 2.
All right. Okay. Cool. So
So,
My
two
friend
stars.
saw it at the same day, and she loved it. She thought it was funny,
who did?
hilarious, well played,
Yeah.
interesting. She loved it. She laughed all the way through it. And so people do. There are people out there who will like it. I'm just
Mhm.
not one of them.
All right, cool. I feel like that is a much. If it sounds like we can have a much deeper philosophical discussion about this than the
I think
film.
it'd be interesting if Holly see. I've got a
Yeah.
feeling Holly might enjoy this movie.
Well, this is being sold as like a little sort of like quaint little British comedy of manners, and I feel like with that there is some sort of like tropes that you drop into like the essentially in a film. Whenever anybody says Christian, you're like, oh my god, they're gonna be they're gonna be the devil, and it and it seems to be the way. But anyway, let's move on.